want to talk to you this morning about seizing the moment. There are amazing opportunities happening out there. There's a very positive vibe. It feels a little bit at odds with coming out of COVID, and we just came out of COVID after 2 years of struggle with that, and now Europe finds itself in the middle of another terrible struggle. So the backcloth, on the face of it, you would be thinking, what's going on with all of this? The vibes aren't so positive. There's a lot of struggles. Our intelligence tells us, from what we see going on in the jobs market, that actually, despite world issues such as the Russia-Ukraine situation and COVID that we've had and Brexit that we had, the world is looking a very, very different place to that at our level. In the jobs market, in the employment, in the economic factors taking place around working in this country. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now. So without any further ado, I'm going to, Yael, am I going to open the PowerPoints for you? I think I can, can't I?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so I'm going to open the PowerPoint and share my screen. So let's hopefully we can get to that. I hope everyone can see that at the moment. Let's just see if I can start the slideshow. Okay, I hope everyone can see that. And this session is called Seizing the Moment. Those of us who speak Latin, that's not me, by the way, would know this to be carpe diem, making the most, seizing the moment, carpe diem, making the most of a buoyant jobs market. So, as I just said, it's a very interesting situation that we're dealing with at the moment. During the pandemic, we can cast our minds back. It's almost like a piece of history now, if the government would have our way and tell us there's nothing to worry about with COVID anymore. But during the pandemic, of course, there was terrible issues in the jobs market. The number of jobs plummeted, people were on furlough. Times were very, very tough and difficult for an awful lot of people. The jobs market absolutely, in one fell swoop, was destroyed overnight. The main restrictions were lifted from COVID in the summer of 2021 after various lockdowns and various iterations along the way. And suddenly, rather mysteriously, what we found, what we observed during the second half of 2021 was that job vacancies started creeping up. And we were looking at what was going on in the UK, widely, and we could see that the number of vacancies was going up, 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 up. This seemed very unusual. And then we looked at our own jobs board, and guess what? We saw exactly the same thing replicated in our own situation here in the microcosm of the Jewish community that is Work Avenue. Before the pandemic was even a twinkle in our lungs or our eyes, we would, if we had 40 jobs on our jobs board or 45 jobs on our jobs board, we would say, gosh, we've got a lot of jobs on our jobs board at the moment. I hope we have all the right people. There's a lot of jobs here. We've got to work hard to fill them. Then, of course, during the pandemic, that number slipped down to about 5 active jobs. It was a really, really difficult time. Now, 2 years on from that, we find ourselves in the situation where we actually have over 150 jobs at any one time. It's over 250 jobs through the continuum of time that we have been talking about. The number of jobs has absolutely mushroomed and exploded. During the pandemic, we had so few jobs and such a large number of people looking for jobs that we were really concerned about how we were going to be able to find work for all our job-seeking clients. Now we find ourselves in the situation where we have so many vacancies and there is so much opportunity and so much diverse opportunity as well, that what we need to do is really work hard with everyone to make sure that we are all appropriately aligned and appropriately skilled in order to be able to make the most of the opportunity that we're playing out at the moment. And we hear from employers all the time. And employers tell us that actually it's getting really hard for them to recruit staff. They have loads of vacancies. And they're not getting the applicants. So for anyone who is really looking for a job at the moment, now is your time. There are so many jobs, and we want to take a few minutes this morning to tell you just how you're going to be able to do that in so many ways. Now, I would say, as we go through, if anyone has any questions, please put them on the chat. We would love to be able to answer your questions. A little bit of what I'm saying might sound a little bit controversial, because you might think that you're still finding it as difficult to find work as you were before. That's what we're hoping to address with you. That's what we're hoping to do to narrow the odds more in your favor. But you may well have questions, so pop them on the chat. We all know how to do that now. And Yael, myself, and any others of our colleagues will be very, very happy to address them at various points as we go through our presentation. So, taking all of this into account, the fact that the market, the jobs market, has played out in ways that we really could not foresee. We had no idea things were going to be like this. What does that actually mean for anyone who is looking for work? So what it tells us is that we are what is known as an applicant's market. It's very difficult for employers to fill their vacancies. It's relatively easy for job seekers to find opportunities that may be interesting for them. Now, obviously, it still means you have to present yourself in a way that's going to appeal to the employer, and that's what Yael's going to spend a little time on later on during this presentation. But the very, very important good news message is that the prospects for finding work at the moment are generally good. They're generally positive. This is marvelous news. It's music to our ears. It's the first vital step of unlocking this conundrum about finding work. Make sure there are jobs out there for me. The fact is there are jobs there now. All we have to do, all we have to do is make it happen for ourselves. But what it also means, therefore, because employers are having a little bit more of a struggle, it means that maybe, hopefully, they will be more open to people who don't absolutely 100% fit all the criteria that they may be asking for. The doors, therefore, open even wider for the job seeker. So this, again, is more good news laden on top of an already positive marketplace. As ever, however, transferable skills, in other words, the skills that you've gained in different aspects of your life beforehand that you can move into your new vacancy, these become essential. So here's a few do's and don'ts about thinking about finding work at the moment. Number one is a do. You really need to understand your skills, experience, what you're looking for, and what you're good at. So talk to an employment advisor. You know, we can all understand, if I were to ask each of you to ask about a loved one, a family member, your close friend, what they're good at, all of you would have absolutely no difficulty in describing in very, very clever, incisive terms the brilliance of your best friend, your sister, your mother, your daughter. However, if I were to turn the tables on each of you and say, now apply the same thing to yourself, some of us find that, me included, find that much more of a struggle. It's so much easier to understand other people sometimes than it is to be able to understand ourselves and our strengths and our skills. And be able to describe those. So talk to someone, talk to a professional person about how you can understand this better and articulate it better at the same time. Do learn how to analyze your fit with a role. In other words, understand how the skills you bring are appropriate and necessary to meet the demands of a job. This is really, really important. An employer doesn't want to know what we're like and what we're good at. They only want to know how what we're good at meets the demands of what they need to get done in the job. I like to think I'm quite good at boiling eggs, actually, getting them just right. It's something I like boiled eggs. I'm quite good at it, but it's of no relevance to an employer. I wouldn't dream of talking about it. If I'm talking to an employer about a job that I want, the only things I should really be talking about are what's relevant to that job. And sometimes we don't always align ourselves appropriately with that. Hopefully, we're going to be talking a bit about that too. Really important, do be confident in presenting your skills in your application, in an interview, in any opportunity you have to sell yourself as part of the recruitment process. This is all about, again, being able to articulate exactly what you can do that's right for the job. In other words, selling yourself positively in terms of the demands of the job. Now, point 4 here is really, really important. I've worked with probably thousands of women over the course of my working life who look at jobs, and the job will have a number of criteria that are really important for the job. And my client will hone in on the very final point, which is probably the least important, and say, well, they need me to sort of be able to do some social media. And it's a very small point, but I've never done social media before. So obviously this isn't the job for me. It's point 20 out of, there are 19 other points above that. But we managed to find the one thing that we feel we're not so expert in and make that the reason why we're not suitable. Take another look at the job. Look critically at it and decide that actually, do you know what? You've got enough experience and skills to make a pretty strong fist of about 3/4 of that job, and the rest you'll learn because you believe in yourself. That will be great. 3/4 is a massive stab. I have to also tell you that men see the world completely differently. Men will focus in on the one thing they know they're really expert in and decide, therefore, they can do the job. So we need to channel our inner man when we're looking at job descriptions. On International Women's Day, that is, we need to channel our inner man to recognize the value, the overwhelming value, the 3/4 at least of value and knowledge and skills and infrastructure we can bring to that job, and decide, therefore, that yes, the job is for us. Something that's come through in quite a number of talks so far this morning is don't be put off by rejection. Amanda spoke about that so eloquently, how many rejections she had in the early part of the career. And I was listening to some other people in the business talk who've also been saying the same thing. It's not personal. It feels horribly personal, but it's not. And don't be put off by it. Keep on going. Believe that the more you do, the greater the chances are of your success. And every step forward you take brings you a little bit closer to the successful job acceptance that you're going to get. And every opportunity to make an application is another opportunity to upskill and therefore narrow the odds more in your favor. So don't be put off by early rejections. It's each and every one is a learning experience. So what's stopping you? What is it that's stopping you? Is it a lack of confidence or self-esteem or self-belief? We understand that. Each of us has felt that on occasion. Is it fear of the unknown? We think we want to find work. We absolutely know that this is what we want to do. But at the same time, it's all a bit terrifying, really. Stick with what I know, actually, which is not putting myself out there. We can all be very, very busy. We all run homes. Many of us have families as well. Some of us have caring responsibilities. Many of us have hobbies and interests that also take a lot of our time. We are not single-faceted. We're all multifaceted, and that can sort of move our job seeking a little bit lower down our priorities list. Sometimes we can be very precise in what we want. And every time we impose a very specific expectation on our job search, what we're doing is that we're narrowing and narrowing and narrowing the available opportunities to us all. We need to open up our minds and think about what might be possible as opposed to what isn't possible. Easy to say, much harder to do, but we can all practice at this. And it does all feel very difficult. We do all feel very torn in many, many different directions. I have felt all of these struggles during my time. It's so worth it to look at what's stopping you. Do your best to overcome it. Talk to people who can help. We can really, really help in all of this stuff, to allow you to move forward to the next stage. So now I'm going to hand over to Yael, who's going to talk about exactly how we can overcome, in practical terms, some of these issues.
Great, thank you, Emma. Hello, everybody. Yes, I would like to speak to you for the last, half an hour or part of the session that we have here, about thinking about some of the concepts that have been spoken about this morning and how they can actually apply to your job search when you're practically looking for work, practically applying for jobs, and presenting yourself to potential employers as a very strong and capable candidate for any job that you decide to go for. So the first thing I want to mention, transferable skills, which have been mentioned, I think probably in every session that has happened this morning. I think I've heard the term transferable skills spoken about in one way or another. And that makes perfect sense because for people who are making a career change, for people who are going back to work, people changing jobs, someone who maybe has had a business now wants to find paid employment, or the other way around, transferable skills will always be important. Now, transferable skills in the context we're talking about are all going into a work situation. So they can come from any of the contexts or environments that you can see here on the screen, from home life, things you've done with your family, things you've done at home, from studying, training, if you volunteer, if you're part of a sports team, your hobbies, your interests, or other jobs that you've held as well, even if they seem quite unrelated to the type of role that you are now applying for. So that is where the transferable skills can come from, and we're looking to take them in the direction of employment in the context of the conversation that we are having today. Now, the thing about transferable skills is this is a skill which a person has. So it's not related to any specific context, hence it's transferable. Sometimes also known as soft skills. You might see that terminology as well when you're looking at jobs or when people are talking about applying for work, transferable skills or softer skills. And these are skills that are attached to the person, not attached to the environment. Hence, you take them with you wherever you go. And everybody here, I'm sure, has many, many different transferable skills that you are able to take from any environment into a work situation. And we'll now look at some examples of transferable skills. Emma, if you wouldn't mind moving on the slide, please.
Yes, I will channel my inner Chris Whitty and move us on to the next slide.
Next slide, please. Okay, so here you can see some examples. Now, obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. There are many, many more transferable skills that you can have. But just to give an example of some skills that you may use every day but haven't really thought about in this context of applying for work, which often I see this when I speak to people who are looking for jobs, and they'll say, oh, I've only done this or I've done that, but how can this be important if I'm applying for work? Does the employer really care? And the answer is that the employer does care if the skill that you have is a skill that they are looking for in this role, and you can explain to them in a confident way and in a sort of compelling argument how you have that skill, where you've used that skill, and how it's going to be relevant to them and add value to the employer if they were to offer you this job. So you can see skills, communication skills, and underneath just that skill of communication come many other sub skills. Positive attributes you might have, you can bring to work, punctuality, meeting deadlines, time management is part of a lot of different jobs. Organizing yourself. So you may have organized your home, you might have organized family events, you might have organized a charity event as a volunteer. The only difference between you doing that and you using the skill there and you using the skill at work is one of them you're paid for and one of them you're not. But actually, it's exactly the same skill that you're using. So there is a little bit of an analysis to do if you're starting to think about what you might want to do, or you're starting to think about jobs you want to apply for. And we're going to look at this in a second, looking at the job, thinking about what are the requirements of this role, and then thinking about how closely do I match and how can I show that to the employer. And I would say, in my experience, in most cases, people will actually match much more of the job than they initially thought when they looked at it. So they look at a job title, they think, I don't know, I haven't done this before, I don't think it's for me, or I don't think I have the skills, or something along those lines, some of the points that Emma mentioned before that might be holding you back. But actually, if you look a little bit closer, the requirements, you may think, actually, I do have that skill, or actually, I did do this here, or I did something similar, and I'm interested, and maybe I'm going to give it a go. Now, the reason why these transferable skills are so important in your job search is because they are important to the employer. And you always want to look at things from the employer's perspective. Okay, so let's just say an employer has 10 people in front of them who all have the relevant qualification to do a job, and they can all use the technology that's needed in that role. Okay, so everyone has their sort of technical requirements that are needed to do the job. So how is the employer going to decide who is the right person for this job? They're then going to look at who are these people, okay? What are their skills? Will they fit into our team? Am I comfortable putting this person in front of my clients? These type of factors will sort of be very important to the employer when they're looking for the right candidate. And you can see that little diagram there, which really represents what I've just been saying, which is very often with roles, you'll see about 20% of them are the technical side or the qualification that you need, and 80% are the softer or transferable skills. Now, the way that this sort of diagram and this theory works, obviously is dependent on the type of role you're going for. So it's not always going to be 80-20. And if you don't have the 20%, then the 80% is not always going to be relevant. So that is the case usually for professions. So if you need a certain qualification to work in a profession, even if on the soft skill side you would be perfect, that's still going to be a barrier to entry. However, in more generalist roles, so roles like marketing, project management, operations, sales, lots of jobs within the community, for example, there's no specific qualification that you need to get into this job. So that's very, very much more about the person and their transferable skills that they can bring to a role. And sometimes it will be 100% transferable skills. So I speak to employers every day about jobs they're looking to fill. And sometimes they'll say to me, I don't mind what the person's done before. I don't mind if they haven't worked for a while, if they want to make a career change. For me, it's about who the person is, what they can bring to me. Do they have initiative and drive? Do they have the right skills that I want? So just bear this in mind when you're thinking about different roles, that the employer is really going to be interested in you as a person, as well as any other experience or qualifications that you have as well. And obviously, in an open job market, transferable skills are a winner, as it says here. Emma mentioned this before. And the reason is that in an applicant's market, there's more jobs around. So employers are going to have to think about not who meets 100% of my criteria, or not who's the dream candidate I have in mind, because very rarely they will get that, but they're going to have to look a little bit more widely. Who's the person? Maybe we can train this person a bit because they have the right skills, or I really like them and I like the personality and I like the voluntary work that they've done. So maybe I'm going to give them a chance. So where you are in a more open market for candidates, applicants who are applying based on transferable skills are likely to do better because the market is generally more favorable to you at the moment. Okay. So just to give an example of what I've just been saying in the context of an actual job. Okay, now I've summarized a job here. This is a job that was on our jobs board in the past. I'm just using it for example purposes. So if you are looking at jobs, you will see most jobs are divided into a job description that describes the job. So here it's summarized as purpose of the job. And then a person specification, which gives the experience, skills, knowledge that the employer would like the person in this job to have. Now, if you have a look at that list, knowledge and experience, you will see there that almost every skill that is listed, all of the criteria are transferable or soft skills, okay? Almost every single one. And this is a customer service, customer support type of role. So what this tells me, or what this will tell you as an applicant, is the employer isn't too worried about what specific experience you have. What they're thinking about is this somebody who's going to be friendly to our customers? Are we happy for them to be taking calls from clients? Are we happy for them to be dealing with complaints that might come in from clients? Is this the right sort of person? Now, and that is not necessarily connected to specific experience that you may have or a specific qualification. It's more about you as a person. And you can see that the employer is saying that by the criteria that they are asking for. So communication, listening skills, being proactive, working on an initiative, etc. Even competent in using Microsoft Office, you don't have to have used that at work. So you may have used that anywhere. And finally, sector experience preferred, but preferred doesn't mean essential. So if you felt that you match the rest of the criteria, you're interested in this job, this is definitely something you can apply for, even if it's not the type of role that you ever would have thought of yourself doing. Okay, then the question becomes, okay, we've got this list of criteria here, but how can you show that you match the things that the employer is looking for? Okay, because some of these terms are quite broad. So you then want to, next slide, please, Emma. Think to yourself in a bit of an analytical way, okay, this is what the employer is asking for. What evidence do I have from any environment, anything that I've done before that would demonstrate I have the skill that they are looking for? So I've just picked out 3 of the areas that were on that list that we just looked at. And you can see the first one's ability to prioritize workload. So it's all about time management, that one. So you could think about what have you done, which would demonstrate you've got good time management skills. Now, it might be juggling multiple responsibilities. It might be that you organized one large project or event and explaining how you broke down the activity into different sections where you were able to meet your deadlines, meet your budget, etc. You may have been studying, and alongside that you had a job, or you started up a business, or anything to do with time management would show that you are somebody who can prioritize a workload. Similarly, confidence, which can be interpreted in many different ways. So public speaking could be a way that you would demonstrate confidence. And then we've got their fundraising as well. So asking people, pitching to people, asking them to donate money to certain cause often takes a certain amount of confidence. Some people love it, some people don't. If you've done sales before, that's very similar as well. Or standing up for your principles on a matter that may be controversial. And obviously there are many more examples that you could choose personally to demonstrate these areas. I'm just trying to show a slightly broader range of things than what you may have thought of before, which could come from different contexts. And finally, listening, understanding your customer. So maybe you volunteered for a helpline, people were calling, you were listening to what they were saying. Maybe you've run an event before and you've asked people to give feedback or feedback on a project or a presentation that you've done, and you've made changes based on that. Or maybe working or volunteering for a charity, speaking to people coming through the door, understanding what they need, and then signposting them in the relevant way for that. Okay, so this is just, if you're looking at jobs and you're thinking about what you can do, and you're looking down the criteria, just think to yourself a little bit more, you know, this is a skill they're after, where have I used it? And then the next stage, which we don't have time for today, but which can be covered at Work Avenue, of course, is then thinking about how you're going to put this information onto your CV, or how you're going to articulate this information when you're sitting in an interview in a way that would create really a compelling argument to the employer as to why you are the right person for the job. Okay, and we'll have next slide, please. Okay, so that's a little bit about thinking about your transferable skills, thinking about how they fit into jobs that you are going for. Just by the way, if you're not up to the stage yet of applying for jobs and you're thinking about what you could do, it's still a similar exercise. So think about what your skills are, think about what you enjoy, what you're good at, it's about your personality and where that may fit. So either you're going to start with thinking about your skills and what jobs they may fit into, or you can start with looking at jobs that you like the look of and thinking about how your skills match what the employer is asking for. So it can be one way, it can be the other way, it can be both ways. Sometimes it takes a bit of a while to get into this, but once you start, you will hopefully feel more comfortable, more confident in thinking about how you can promote your skills, and you'll see how they can add value. Okay, so just a few other points to make about looking for work in a buoyant job market. What else can you do? So networking, another theme I know has come up this morning quite a bit. Yes, networking is one of the best ways to find a job consistently. If you ask people who are looking for work in any context, they will tell you usually referrals, networking, speaking to people is one of the best things you can do when you're looking for work. Now, especially if you're looking to change jobs, if you're looking to return to work after a career break, and you may think, my written application might not be as strong as somebody else's, so I haven't had recent experience of why would an employer want to hire me. Now, I hope you've all got reasons from this morning as to why they would, but the point I want to make is if you're speaking to people and you come in as a warm lead to a potential employer, then the way that your application is written and your CV and all the sort of technical parts of applying for work become less important because you've already got one foot in the door. And that is really, really important. You know, when we speak to employers here and we recommend our clients, we can tell them, we've met this person. Yes, they might not have done this before. Their experience might not match or might not be recent. However, we've met this person, we know them, I think they would be good for you. And very often people are receptive to a recommendation. And again, it's not just about finding a job, it's very much about, can you help me? Can you give me advice, guidance, careers advice? Who else should I be speaking to? And all of these things together hopefully take you one step further to finding your next role. Okay, another thing you can do is, if we can move to the next slide, please, is thinking about job boards that might be helpful to you. So there are some very large job boards that a lot of you have probably heard of, like Reed and Monster listed there, and indeed those type of job sites. Now, the thing with those is, obviously they're mass job sites, and a lot of people will apply for jobs through those sites. So you're going to have a really, really large volume of applications for any one job there. So they work well for people who have done, let's say, worked as an administrator their whole career and now applying for a very, very similar job, because you have to almost be a clear match to be able to get through. And that's just because of the volume applications, and it's a very impersonal process. So we would say sometimes for career changes, for returning to work, where there's more of a story that you want to give, it's not always the most effective method. However, there are some job boards that are more helpful to you. So first one that we have listed obviously is our own. Please, anyone looking for work, as an aside, just keep an eye on our jobs board, because we're adding new jobs almost every day, I would say. We personally recommend our clients, and you can see a very large number of clients did find work through our jobs board directly last year, people who we have recommended to employers. And then you've got another couple of sites there as well. Laurel Leaf Networking, helpful, and also Timewise Jobs, helpful for part-time work as well as Facebook groups. If you're looking for local work, there's a lot of different social media and friendly job sites that you can use, which also have an element probably of networking incorporated into them as well. That's why they're generally more effective for people as well. So think about where you're looking, how you're looking, where will the jobs be that you want. So if you're looking to work, for example, in a small local business or community organization, very often they will post their jobs, on social media, on their own websites, maybe on our website, if communal type roles, rather than putting them on mass job sites, or rather than possibly using a recruitment agency. So you want to make sure that you're looking for the jobs in the places where the employers are going to be advertising those vacancies. So think about it, from that perspective as well, to try and be a little bit more strategic in your job search. That's obviously something that we can advise on in a one-to-one session as well. And finally, one last thing you can think about doing is things that you could do to try and bridge the gap. If we can move to the next slide, please. Bridge the gap if you are going to be coming back to work, if you're going to be changing career, if you're going to be doing something that you haven't done before, then it's inevitable there's going to be some sort of gap there in skills or experience, just because you haven't done that thing before and it's something new. So thinking about what you could do to try and close that gap, at least a little bit, so you're going to increase your chances of being successful. So one thing is definitely volunteering or work shadowing. So if you can volunteer in an area you're interested in, or get some experience, even shadowing for a few days, that's really helpful. Number one, gives you a chance to see what it's like. And people have told me they've tried something for a week and then realized actually it's not for them. So it depends, how quickly you'll get that insight, but it can be helpful. And it's also helpful because it puts recent relevant experience onto your CV. So when you come to apply for the jobs, you're actually a more relevant candidate to the employer had you not done this voluntary work. Thinking about training, if you can, there are quite a lot of short-term affordable training options now online in all different areas. So we've put a few options there: Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, Allison, etc. Many things that you can find, quite affordable, quite not massive time commitment either. So if you want to learn a new technology, or you're seeing all the jobs you're going for are asking for something specific and you haven't done that, but then you can find a course in that, that would add value to your job application. So again, think about it in the context of what you want to do and what employers may be looking for. Longer term training is obviously always an option, but you just want to think about if that's required for what you want to do, and is it feasible? Does it work for you in a personal capacity as well? The time commitment, the financial commitment, the return on investment that you're going to get. Is that a good idea for you, or is there another way forward? And it can be either or. It's very much a personal decision and depends on your own circumstances. So that is the few things that I would add in terms of progressing your job search in a very buoyant job market, things that you can think about. Obviously, all of those things I would say are areas which we cover at Work Avenue more at length in workshops and also in one-to-one meetings. So this is sort of an overview that anything can be explored further as well. And just to conclude, I wanted to tell you a story of one of my clients I was working with last year who was looking to return to work. Now, this is a typical story of a woman returner. So this is Lisa. She worked in marketing in the corporate world initially. Then she moved over to a community role, also within marketing. And then in 2015, took a career break for family. So took a career break for 6 years. In that time, she did some volunteering. She did a little bit of work for family business here and there. But really, last year, she decided she wanted to go back into formal employment, permanent employment in a part-time role. So she came to Work Avenue, said, this is my background, this is what I'm looking for. Very typical type of client that we would see. So we spoke to her about her job search, and she started getting going on her applications. And she made a first application in May, and she didn't get an interview. She sent off an application, nothing happened. But just that act of sending off the first application made her, you know, say, and quoted from an email she sent me, that it spurred her on to getting her CV into shape for future applications. So this comes back to the point of just getting started will increase your confidence by virtue of the fact that you just got started and you sent one application off or two applications off, you know, to get yourself going. The next application, she was offered an interview. So we've got one stage further, not offered the job. She said, okay, I'm feeling fine. I'm ready to continue. I've now applied for jobs. I've now had an interview, which I haven't had in years. So having that first interview as well is often very, very helpful to people too. Then we have a few more applications in July. Only got one interview. Two of them did not offer an interview. And she starts to think a little bit, getting rejection emails. I think it's my career gap. I'm being overlooked. So it's very normal. Starts off quite, you know, very positively, and then as time's going on and you're putting work into your applications and you see actually it doesn't seem to be moving as quickly as I would like, which is very, very normal. And then in August we have a few more, no interviews from those applications. Okay, sent off CV, sent off cover letter, doesn't get any interviews. Okay, we never know who else is applying for jobs, so we wouldn't expect everybody gets an interview for every job that they go for. And she's feeling a bit despondent. And then in September, on the 9th job application that she made, she was offered an interview and offered the job at that point, which is great. And she says it's very exciting. From CV improvement to understanding the job specs, work avenue support, I've secured the post. So we can see here how it's not something that happens overnight for people. As we said earlier, don't be put off by early rejections. If you apply for something and it doesn't work out, it's not a reflection on you and your capabilities. There's so many other factors that go into things. You don't know who else is applying. We don't know exactly what the employer is looking for. You're dealing with people, so you don't know anything for sure. You can only do the best thing you can do to apply for the job and then see what happens. And as we see here, it goes up, it goes down, and then in the end, there was an interview and job offer. And I can say this is reflective of many other clients that we have seen at Work Avenue as well. And finally, I think that going to just go through how we can hopefully help you after today, and then stop and see if there's any questions for the last few minutes of anything from this morning. I think that is the plan anyway. So after today, I know there's a lot of things that have been covered. We've had some great speakers. Any of the areas covered can be continued in a one-to-one conversation with us. So an employment or careers advice meeting, or a one-to-one business advice meeting. So if you're looking for work, obviously that's the employment careers advice. If you're looking to start or grow your own business, that will be a business advice meeting that you can book with us free of charge with one of our advisors. Workshops, we have workshops covering a range of topics related to job searching. So your CV, your interview skills, transferable skills, LinkedIn, confidence, networking, all the areas which will hopefully put you in a better position to find your next role. So help you to become a more efficient, more effective job seeker, so that, you know, this will narrow the odds in your favor, and either you will find a job through our jobs board, we'd be happy to recommend you, or you will find a job through your own avenues as well. We always say keep your job search as wide as possible to try and give yourself the best opportunity as well. And there are equivalent workshops as well on the business side as well for anybody who's looking to grow and develop their own business too. Please keep an eye on our jobs board if you're actively job searching. We always keep our clients in mind and love to be able to recommend people for jobs. Speaking to employers all the time, they're all telling me they're finding it hard to recruit staff and to find the right people. So when, you know, a good candidate comes along, employers are very happy. They're not looking to say no, they're looking to say yes, they're looking to hire. We will do everything we can to help you, but please engage with us as well if you're looking for work. Speak to us about your job search, and let's see how we can hopefully move things forward together after today. Okay.
Can we stop the share and bring it back to the screen?
Do you want to do that?
Does anyone have any questions for Yael or myself or any other member of the Work Avenue team? I have one I'd like to ask Yael.
Go for it, Emma.
I'm very, it's something that's been on my mind. I'm very conscious of the fact that we have spent an hour talking about the wonderful jobs market and the amazing opportunities it represents. And at the same time, I'm very well aware that our team spend a lot of time working with clients who do make a lot of applications and feel that the jobs market may not be any better for them than it might have been a year ago or whatever. They feel they're no further forward. And it can feel a little bit frustrating, and this can feel a little bit, you know, are you really saying that? Is that really how it is? What advice would you have people who may be harboring those feelings?
Okay, so yes, thank you for mentioning that. Definitely understand these points that are being made. So I would say from my perspective, I'm sort of a bridge, a Work Avenue, I can speak for my role here, between the advisors who work very much one-to-one with clients and with the employers who are looking to recruit. Now, in a perfect world, we have a number of people actively looking for work, and we have a large number of jobs that employers are looking to fill, and it would be great if, you know, every person slotted straight into a job. But obviously, in reality, things are not like that. People might be looking for certain things. You may be looking for something. You might have certain working preferences that you have, a certain sector you want to work in, and employers might be looking to recruit people who are in a completely different sector. So you might be looking to apply for a job, you know, in something. You're looking for apples, they're looking for pears. It doesn't match together. Okay. Now, in that context, you might think what said, or the fact that it's a very buoyant job market, you haven't seen this because you haven't found work. What I would say is that we need to, I think, take steps sometimes, as you saw in that from that story of Lisa, who was already applying for jobs when the job market had significantly improved since COVID. Things don't necessarily happen straight away. Things go in steps, one step closer to the next role. It may be that you might want to just change your job search a little bit. So, I mean, in the way that you're looking, where you're looking for work, it may be that you want to think about your CV. It may be that you're getting to a lot of interviews, but then you're not getting jobs. So then we might want to think about, okay, what's happening in the interviews? Maybe there's something little that you could do to change your interview technique as well. So it's very much a multifaceted situation, context. It's hard to say for sure. As I said before, we're dealing with people, and you never know exactly why they might say yes to one person and say no to one person. Having done this for a long time, I get, you know, ideas of how things will go very often based on experience, but also sometimes I'm surprised by what employers will ask for, what employers will go for, which clients might find work more quickly than other clients. So I would not want people to feel that you want to give up, or that it's a personal thing that you haven't found work. I would say because there's so many factors involved in this, and obviously this can be discussed in more detail, I would say one-to-one with our advisors to move people forward. But there is a general positive upwards trend, I would say. So if you haven't experienced that yet, then I'm hoping that you may experience it going forward. Okay. Yes, that is what I would say. If you haven't experienced this yet, then I hope that people would be able to see this moving forward. And just in general, in the country as a whole, this gap exists as well between what employers are looking for and a little bit about what candidates are looking for too. So it's a bit of a thing that there are a lot of jobs, there are a lot of people looking, but sometimes that match between the two is a little bit challenging, and I think that's a lot of what it is as well.
And we have one question in the chat from Lara, very sensible and wise question. How do things work with regard to references from previous employers? Can they provide a bad or a non-reference? And would it matter if you've been out of the jobs market for a while?
Am I answering this?
I think so, yes, if you don't
Okay.
mind. You're pretty good at these things, Yael.
Well, the point I want to make about references answering is that the whole area of references, I think, is far less important than it was maybe previously. So if somebody has worked often in large companies, or not always in large companies before, a lot of employers will give a reference that's factual. So what that means is that they'll state that a person has worked, they worked in the job that they say they worked. So you worked here from this date to this date, and this was the job title of the person. So confirmation of employment, it's not an opinion-based reference, it's a fact-based reference only. And that's because employers are worried about anything that may come back to them afterwards. Also, references are usually taken at the time when the employer wants to offer someone a job. So it will be an offer subject to references. So very often at that point, the employer's already decided, okay, we want to offer somebody a job. We're just going to take some references almost procedurally or almost to rubber stamp their suitability for the job. But it's very often not the main event at all. If you've been out of the job market for a while, well, then if you haven't worked recently, then you haven't. So then you could discuss it with the employer. I can give you my most recent employer, if they're still around, people say, but it was 10 years ago. Or maybe they'd take a character reference instead from somebody who knows you in a personal capacity. If you've done volunteering, they might take a reference from the organization or charity you're volunteering for, or something like this. It's definitely not an insurmountable problem. I would say the area of references is usually a way that you can, get around that. I'd say it's much more about you showing that you're suitable and strong match for the job. If you're being asked for references after an interview, I think that's a very good sign. Actually.
I would agree. And we have time for a question from Leah, who asks, what should one calculate is a reasonable, or how should one calculate what is a reasonable salary to request from a potential employer at an interview, and when is it appropriate to request a pay rise in an existing job? So I think Leah's asking the question, sometimes in an interview, the employer will say to you, what salary are you after? Which is always a very challenging question to be put on the spot with in an interview. Do you have any, talking to employers all the time, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, so the first thing I would say is, obviously this is a case where someone's asked in an interview what you're looking to earn, what yes. Your salary expectations, something like this. If you're not asked the question about salary, just to go back one step, we will not suggest that you raise that point in an interview, because the best time to discuss salary or to negotiate on salary, or actually any terms of employment, is one to offer the job, because then your negotiating position is much stronger because you know that the employer wants you. However, if you're sitting in the interview and they ask you this, then I would say prior to the interview, you want to think about what an average salary would be for this type of role. Now, if they've given a salary range, okay, then you know what it is. If they haven't given a salary range, I would say that you want to almost try to you don't want to try and stick yourself to one number necessarily. People will say different things. My opinion is that maybe you would give a range that would be reasonable to the type of role that you are applying for. Or if you're coming from another job, you might say something about what your current salary is and you're looking to earn X, or I'm looking between this and this. So it's a bit of a delicate one, because you don't want to say something so low when they would have offered you more, but you also don't want to say too high when they're thinking, okay, this person wants to earn much more money. So either we don't want to offer them that, or really they're just going to be here until they can find something at the salary that they want. So I think that research can be helpful to you in
And
that
to research,
context.
there are some big job boards like Indeed that will give you a very strong idea of what the market is like, supporting salaries like that. Another tactic that, I mean, that's all absolutely appropriate. And I would also add that another tactic that you can use is to suggest that the salary you're looking for is one that is commensurate with the demands of the role and your level of experience. And kind of not give an answer, but suggest, therefore, that you are looking for the market rate for the role, which ought to be enough at that stage. And requesting a pay rise in an existing job. Again, this is a very subjective thing. Many businesses have an annual pay cycle. So requesting outside of that pay cycle doesn't really happen. If they don't, you obviously want to be able to request a pay rise from a position of strength. In other words, you know you have performed and will continue to perform that job to the best level of your capability. So you are at the top of your game when you're requesting a pay rise, but also that the person that you're going to talk to is at the top of their game too, by which I mean they are in a good place. If your boss is having a bad day, that's never going to be a good time to request a pay rise. So pick positive moments and think about the reasons why a pay rise might be appropriate. Typically, reasons are going to be because you are good at your job, because you are performing well, because you're adding a lot of value and experience and contribution to that business. In other words, reasons why you are worth something good to them. Make it a warm, positive discussion, always humble, always courteous, always polite, always engaged, always warm and friendly. And hopefully it'll be a positive conversation. I don't know that we've got time for any more questions because we have actually reached the end of our Women in the Workplace conference today. It's 1:30, or more specifically 1:28. And that leaves me just enough time to thank all of you for joining us this morning. We have heard some truly, truly inspirational talks from all our speakers. Our keynote speaker, Victoria, our wonderful author, Amanda, our great schmooze when we broke out into the breakout rooms, our wonderful employment clients who found work, and equally wonderful small businesses who have started and developing their enterprises so warmly. And we finish off with some inspiration about making the most of next steps. It really is a great time now. I want to close by thanking you all for having the perseverance to stick with us this morning. I hope it's been benefit and interesting and enjoyable. And you've taken something from it. We are here all the time to support you. We really understand what it is to be a job seeker, to start a small enterprise, to want to grow and develop your career, the setbacks you may be facing, the juggling, the commitments you may be facing, the issues, the lack of a CV, the lack of interview practice. We are here for you in all of these regards. Perhaps someone can just quickly pop in the chat our web address, which is theworkavenue.org.uk. But you all know that anyway, because here you are on the talk this morning. Do be in touch with us, and we will be sending out some feedback to thank you again for joining us today. We appreciate what you will tell us about how we can continue to improve every intervention and every event we run. And I hope that we can continue to be of benefit and service and support to every single woman in our networks, not just on International Women's Day, but on every day moving forward as well. You know where to reach us, you know where to find us all. Thank you all again. It's been great. And I'm now going to close the conference. So thank you very, very much. All the best to you all. Bye-bye now.